Right, so I'll keep this simple. Diddy wasn't found guilty of some giant conspiracy. The jury landed on 2 counts under the Mann Act, moving adults across state lines for paid encounters. That's what stuck. The heavier labels people tossed around online, those didn't land in court. And that split matters. Why? Because sentencing lives in the details. The guidelines weigh what you were actually convicted of, not the loudest headline from last year. So the judge looks at the 2 counts, the evidence tied to those counts, and any add-ons the lawyers argue over, money involved, planning, etc. That's the legal box we're in right now. Not vibes, not old clips, just the charges that made it through. But here's where it gets messy. The time he's already spent locked up, plus what his lawyers say he's lived through inside, could bend the numbers. They're pushing hard for time served. And that brings us to the fight over what really happened inside MDC. Here's the picture his team paints. He's stuck in a place that feels more like a pressure cooker than a jail. Think bright lights that never really shut off, checks every couple hours that yank you out of sleep, and a dorm setup where you're basically 2 steps from the next guy and the bathroom has 0 privacy. They say he hasn't felt real sun on his skin in months. The water isn't clean unless you heat it, and sometimes the food is, yeah, let's just say not what you'd serve a guest. On top of that, they claim the vibe inside swings from tense to dangerous. Fights, sudden lockdowns, everybody on edge. Do I know if every line of that is true? No. These are defense claims, and defense claims are designed to push the sentence down. But I also know MDC has a reputation for being rough, and if even half of this is accurate, it explains their play. Use conditions plus time served as the ask, and that's exactly where they're headed. 14 months and out. But the other side brought a calculator, and those numbers are bigger. Here's their pitch in one breath. He's been inside for over a year. He's sober now. He's kept his head down, and he's helping other inmates with life skills stuff. They say his career cratered, deals died, schools cut ties, and his family took the hit too. Kids missed gigs, employees lost work, a whole life paused. Stack that with the conditions inside, and the message is, he's paid enough. Let him go home and keep rebuilding on the outside. It's emotionally loaded on purpose. Defense memos are part law, part storytelling. Paint the time already served as heavy, paint the man as changed, and cap it with a neat number, 14 months, that sounds measured, not random. If the judge buys that framing, he walks soon. But the courtroom has a second calculator, the guideline math, and the other side thinks the total runs a lot higher. Here's the math you'll hear in court. The government's not aiming low. Their range runs into years, not months. And then there's the probation report, the folks who do the spreadsheet work, pushing an even higher range. How do they get there? Add-ons. In guideline land, you start with the base for the offense, then stack points for stuff like planning, money involved, number of people, was this part of a pattern, all that. Each add-on bumps the score. Higher score equals longer time. It's dry, but it's powerful, because judges look at that chart first before they go up or down for life factors. So we've got 2 pictures. Defense says, time served, he's different now. The other side says, nope, the chart says more, and the chart matters. Somewhere between those 2 pictures is the actual sentence. The question is, which story the judge trusts more on the day. And trust me, both teams know optics matter. That's why you're seeing a stack of letters from friends and family. Let's talk about those. When the math looks bad, you bring human faces. That's what the letters are for. Friends, family, and a few industry names stepped up to say he's kind, he mentors, he donates, he's trying to be better. One letter everyone talks about is from Young Miami. She basically says the man she knows isn't the monster the internet built. That helps paint a softer picture. Dad, boss, mentor, not headline. Does it fix the counts? No. But letters can nudge a judge to go lighter, especially if they line up with a he's changed story. Here's the risk though. Outside the courtroom, people don't read nuance. Support can look like ignoring the pain of others, and some supporters catch heat for it. Why stand up now? Which turns their reputation into collateral. The judge knows that too. Letters can move the needle a little, but they're not a magic key. They're a vibe check. Who he helped, who still believes in him, and whether that version feels real. And while the letters try to warm the room, the fallout from the last 2 years did the opposite. Let's talk about everything that got pulled. This part stings, even if you don't like him. The ripple effect hit everything with his name on it. Honors gone, partnerships paused, projects canceled, schools and boards distanced themselves fast. And yes, his team says the family took a hit. Kids lost gigs, employees lost paychecks, a whole business web snapped. That doesn't change the verdicts, but it sets the stage for sentencing. He's already paid in public and in pocket. Judges hear that all the time, but it lands differently when the loss is obvious and permanent. Here's the flip side. Consequences aren't the same as accountability. Losing a show isn't the same as serving time. The court isn't grading a PR disaster. It's weighing the 2 counts in front of it. So while the defense stacks life penalties, the court's still looking at the chart and the facts. That's why the real question isn't did he suffer, it's how much does that matter compared to the guideline number. And that funnels into the big day. What actually happens when the clock hits sentencing? Picture the scene. Both sides get their last word. Defense leans on time served, growth, rehab, letters, and the conditions inside. The government leans on the guideline math, consistency, and the message a sentence sends. The judge has a menu of options. Go near time served and add supervised release. Short leash, lots of rules. Land in the middle, a few years, credit the time he's already done, plus supervised release. Go toward the high end of the range, years inside, limited credit for the personal story. There's also the small print stuff nobody talks about. Fines, program requirements, travel limits, treatment conditions, and how soon he'd be eligible for programs that shorten time if he behaves. Even if the number looks big, those extras shape how it feels in real life. And don't forget the next chapter, appeals and post-sentencing motions. If the defense thinks the judge missed something or weighed an enhancement wrong, they'll push back. So the story doesn't end when the gavel hits. Sometimes it just changes venues. But before we jump to appeals, here's what I'll be watching in the judge's words. First, how the judge treats the jail conditions claims. If he calls them concerning, that's defense oxygen. If he says not persuasive, that's a colder wind. Second, which enhancements he accepts. That single decision can swing the number by months or years. Third, where he places blame and credit. Does he give weight to sobriety, mentoring, and family impact, or does he focus on the conduct in the counts and the pattern the government described? My take? The cleanest landing spot is between the 2 extremes. Time served feels light next to the guideline math, but the high end ignores the real-world context and the year he's already done. So I'm expecting a split-the-difference vibe. Acknowledge the inside time, credit the changes, but still add a chunk that says the law matters. That's not a prediction. It's a read on how judges often balance heat and history. Here's what I'll leave you with. Big cases aren't just about a number. They're about the message around that number. If it's low, people say fame wins. If it's high, people say the system finally bit back. Either way, the internet will scream. I'm more interested in the why. What the judge says will tell us how much the court values personal change, public fallout, and harsh lockup conditions against a calculator that doesn't care about headlines. Now I want to hear you. What's fair here? Time served, middle ground, or years? Drop your number and your reason. And don't worry, we're not done. If anything wild pops off at sentencing, I'll break it down fast. What changed, what didn't, and what comes next.